Hello everybody, it's David here again, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to manually instrument .NET applications with OpenTelemetry. Now, I'll give you a little tour of the application we're going to be instrumenting first. So over here in my Visual Studio Code environment, I have got a .NET login application. Very, very simple. It's got a bit of startup going on here. We've got essentially the main method over here. We've got one login controller that's just returning a user ID, right? Very, very simple. What we're doing is getting a random user ID and returning that over HTTP. We're actually returning JSON. So, very, very simple. But, ultimately, the serious point here is that, login is generally a very slow process, right? Lots of people get very frustrated with logins, generally takes quite a long time. It's very, very important that we have some visibility into what's going on when a customer logs in or somebody logs into a system, right? We need to see exactly what's happening and can also help with security as well. At the moment, my application has absolutely no visibility. I can't really see anything that's going on. I might actually get some logs. There's a little bit of log information here. But ultimately, I'd like to get much better visibility about what's happening, particularly around this login process here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry is going to give me a lot more information about what's happening, how long requests are taking. I can even add little bits of information, like the user ID into my OpenTelemetry spans if I want to. And I'm going to start getting some information about, if this service is impacting my customers. Now, how do we do that? Well, the first thing I recommend everybody does, is to go over here to the OpenTelemetry website and have a look at the manual instrumentation section for .NET. Okay, so one thing I just want to make clear is that there are a few differences, right, from the standard OpenTelemetry libraries you might be used to if you're using Python or Java. Ultimately, the way that it works in .NET is that the tracing API is implemented by the System Diagnostics API, which you're seeing here, right? And so when we do this, we use activity source and activity. So we're not using spans and baggage and things like that. We're using Microsoft terminology. We're using things like activity and activity source. But it does translate one-to-one perfectly to a span, right? So activity is a span. It's just a little bit of different terminology that you've got to get used to. So the first thing we need to do, as it says here, is we need to, in our ASP.NET Core app, is we need to add some packages. So the first thing you're going to want to do is add these. Very easy to do. You just copy and paste that into the command line here, and it will add those packages for you into your .NET application. Once you've done that, then we want to add in some service configuration. Now, in my login app over here, I've got one I made for this manual instrumentation exercise. In here, in the startup script, in the startup C# classes, you've actually got a configure service method. And in here, we're actually adding the OpenTelemetry and the tracing. Now, one thing that caught me out here is I did need to add in this add ASP net core instrumentation method. And that's not something which I saw here in the documentation for OpenTelemetry, but it's very important to get me up and running with OpenTelemetry. So you can see you don't need a lot of configuration, just a little bit. But yes, this ASP.NET Core instrumentation method is very important. Once you've added that in, you actually then in the login controller, you just add one of these activity sources, and then you wrap any code that you want to measure with a particular separate, activity or a span in OpenTelemetry parlance with that activity. So we've wrapped this user generation code or this logging code with an activity, so we can know exactly how long it's taking to do authentication, which is really important to us, right? We want to make sure our customers are not being impacted by slow logins. So we put all the pieces in place here. The only other thing you need to do is you need to make sure you've got all the OpenTelemetry environment variables, right? And you can actually get these from Elastic. So Elastic is 100% compatible with OpenTelemetry, first class support. And if you go over here to observability and you click on APM, you'll see in here services. And if you click on add data, that you can see there in the top right hand corner and scroll down, you'll see an OpenTelemetry tab. And as long as you set the environment variables in the way that is mentioned in this tab, you'll be able to get up and running very quickly. So we've already done that. We put that in our application here. We put the environment variables in here all ready to go. And then we added the .NET entry point there. So really simple, just the activity source here, wrapping the code that you want to trace. This is for manual instrumentation, remember. And in the startup, we just add the bootstrap code, including that ASP core instrumentation. And then as long as we have these environment variables set, you're good to go. It really is that simple. So let's get on with it. Let's build our Docker container here. We can see, I really like this, right? So, I always used to do builds back in the old days when, you used to do it on your machine and then it goes into CI/CD and it fails. But I love this ability to do builds from source code inside Docker containers. It means they're much less likely to fail on the CI/CD environment when you push there. So I thought it was pretty cool. So now we've built that, we're actually going to run our Docker container. And it should start up in a minute. There we go. And if we go over here, we've actually got it up and running, as you can see. We can, refresh it, different usernames come back. And if we hop over to Elastic, we can actually see in the APM section over here that, yes, indeed, it's popped up. There we go. So now we actually have full traceability into the login transaction here. And we can see exactly how long it's taking. Now, it's kind of unsurprising, really, that this is actually very, very quick. We're actually doing some work over here. We've got some information here about that activity and what's happening and some trace IDs. So now we really have implemented OpenTelemetry and we get full visibility into how long that login process is taking. So it's that easy to instrument with OpenTelemetry, and so happy instrumenting. Now, if you do want to actually get started with Elastic APM, scan one of the QR codes. It should take you to either the Quick Start Guide, the OpenTelemetry integration, or the Elastic Observability Guide, and that should be able to get you up and running very, very quickly. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care.